Yes, it is time now for Truth, Justice in the NBA. And let me start off by saying that I am not a San Antonio Spurs fan. I'm actually a Lakers fan. And yeah, you can quit laughing now, okay? We've got their logo just over my right shoulder to show tribute to a team that's had one hell of a run. And it would be a shock if they were able to do what they did this past season. And that is enter the upcoming season with the same players, okay? And that's what they did. Entering the 2013-2014 season after losing to Miami 2 years ago in the finals. They entered with the same roster, and of course chemistry mattered a lot, as did coaching, and they end up beating Miami in the finals rematch. Well, they have a total of 10 free agents. That's most of their squad coming up this summer. And before we get into the particulars, the numbers, and the possibilities of who and who will not be back, give credit to the Clippers. Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals was an absolute classic. In fact, it was one of the best series that we've seen in quite a while. It's just a shame it had to be in the first round. We'd love to have seen a series like that in the conference finals or maybe the NBA finals. But you take what you can get. It was a game. How close and how exciting was it? Well, let me put it this way. There were 16 ties and 31 lead changes. That right there is an appropriate Game 7 of which the first 6 games, you just didn't know who was going to win, and home court didn't seem to matter. The home team lost 4 of the first 6. But the Clippers, playing on their home court at Staples Center, delivered at the end of the third quarter with a Chris Paul heave-ho from three-point range that made it up the glass. And then with time winding down with a second to go, over the outstretched hands of Danny Green and Tim Duncan, Paul delivered again with a hurt hamstring, made the winning shot off the glass to win the game 111-109. Now, I'm not saying that the Spurs can't keep just about every player that they've had from this past year, but it won't be easy because of the fact that you have so many free agents, okay? That's the big thing. And also, too, could retirement be in the future of Greg Popavich as well as Tim Duncan, who is 39, and Manu Ginobili, who pretty soon will be 38, okay? So age now becomes a factor for at least 2 of the superstars from a team that's won 5 championships in less than 20 years. 1999 with Elliott, Duncan, of course, David Robinson with that squad, and of course we've seen in the 2000s, wins over the Nets, a sweep in 03, a sweep in 07 against Cleveland and some guy named LeBron James, and then 05 lasting 7 games, but getting to the finish line and beating Detroit. And 2014, as we mentioned, the revenge against LeBron and, of course, his old team, as we call them now, the Miami Heat. It is the first time, by the way, since 1998 that neither the Lakers, the Heat, or the Spurs will appear in the NBA Finals. Of course, the last 2 years it was the Heat and the Spurs in the Finals. So, a little bit of irony for you. In the game, going back to Game 7, first of all, Chris Paul was dynamite. We mentioned his efforts despite having a hurt hamstring, and of course his status for tonight's Game 1 on Monday the 4th against Houston, very much up in the air. But he delivered with 27 points, 6 assists. Blake Griffin, triple-double for that guy. He went ice cube in that game. 24 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists. Not bad for the big guy. And J.J. Redick at 14. Not much of a bench for the Clippers, but that we have come to expect. So you got to get the most out you can from Jamal Crawford. He delivered with a whopping total of 16 points. And Matt Barnes, second straight game that the guys played well after playing like crap the first 5. He had 17 in the game, including 10 in the first quarter. And for Duncan, my gosh, if that was his last game, he did everything he could. He tied up the game with a couple of free throws in the final seconds, kept his team in it, scored 10 of his 27 in the fourth. And you saw Tony Parker emerged with 20 points. Danny Green had 16. He's a free agent coming up, and so is Manu Ginobili. And it was an 8-point effort for him. We've seen him do better. We've seen him have better seasons. Okay, he only averaged 10.5 points this year, and by the way, that's his lowest point per game average since his rookie year. Which is over 10 years ago. He's been in the league that long. Of course, he's played international ball. Prior to that. So, for the efforts of the Clippers, who hung in there, had to overcome that 3-2 deficit, win at AT&T Center in Game 6, and they come back to win at home, a couple of days later. Chris Paul showed his worth, and for Doc Rivers and company, it's on to round 2 against Houston, and I do favor Houston in this series. They're a little bit fresher right now. Their bench is a little deeper, and this is going to be a little different style than what the Clippers are used to because Houston really likes to go up-tempo. And if I were the Clippers coach, which I'm not, of course, what would I do about Chris Paul? I would sit him out this first game, okay? Because if that hamstring, if you still have doubts about it, he's going to be ineffective throughout the entire series. The more rest you can give it, the better you are. And I know that having him gone for a game or two would stink, but if you're down 2-0, okay, come back to Staples. You can use Paul for the rest of the series, watch his minutes, but if you use him too much tonight, or even, just halfway through the game, you could make that hamstring worse, and then you don't have any Chris Paul at all, even if the series goes 7 games. And if there's no Paul, I can't imagine the Clippers taking this thing to 7. So we'll see what happens with Paul and with the Clippers, who have just 48 hours to recover after Houston disposed of Dallas much, much earlier. So the salary cap issues for San Antonio, okay? If you're talking about Tony Parker, Thiago Splitter, Boris Diaw, Patty Mills, and Kyle Anderson, 5 guys who aren't going anywhere, they occupy this, ladies and gentlemen, $34.2 million. Remember, the salary cap estimated to be $67.4 for the upcoming season. Kawhi Leonard, by the way, if he stays, he is a restricted free agent. If another team offers, San Antonio can match that, okay? 7.2, of course, is the cap hold. So 7.2 adding 34.2, gives you a total of $41.4 million that San Antonio would have spent. And by the way, they still have a total of 7 spots to fill. Danny Green is a huge name out there. And remember, we've got that TV contract expiring after this year. So the new salary cap after the 2015-2016 season really balloons at that point. So Green's going to get a 1-year deal somewhere, and he's going to be making more than double the money of what he made this past year. Okay, that rookie contract's over, so I think he made about $4 million this past year. He'll make about $10 million wherever he goes. So that's debatable if he'll be back or not. And also, too, Marco Bellinelli, he could go to Italy and make more money playing international ball. That's been widely discussed, although that's not a guarantee. He's unrestricted free agent. And, of course, Manu Ginobili made $7 million this past year. Retirement or a pay cut this next year, which I think will happen. One of those 2 scenarios. He's not going anywhere. It's either bye-bye basketball or 1 more year in San Antonio. And remember, he's about to approach 38 years old pretty soon. So you've got $26 million, 7 players, and then you've got some other guys on the team who don't even make $1 million, if so just barely. Guys like Matt Bonner, who's a sentimental favorite amongst Popavich. You have Jeff Ayers, another post player, Aaron Baines, and Corey Joseph, both, by the way, are restricted free agents. So you will see some changes on this team. If Duncan retires, I do think LaMarcus Aldridge will be a Spur, because at that point I think Aldridge will be making 10, 11, 12 million. He'll even take a little bit of a pay cut compared to what he'd been making in Portland. That would not surprise me at all, because he knows that a bigger payday is ahead in a couple of years. Remember, Aldridge is from Texas, played his college ball at the University of Texas. So the 3 teams I'm hearing about right now perhaps are the Bulls or Dallas. But number 1 is San Antonio as far as Aldridge's preferences. I don't think he'll be back in Portland. That look likely, not with that $15 million price tag. I think Portland's scared of that. So there's going to be changes to San Antonio, something that they're not used to. And if that's the case, well, for San Antonio, it's been one heck of a run. Again, I'm not a fan of them, but for Popavich and for Duncan, who played together for 18 years, man, that's something else. 5 championships, 6 NBA Finals appearances, and they're both going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. And I respect not only what they've been able to do throughout the years in terms of their team chemistry play, but also, too, the fact that, over recent years they've stayed together. Okay, they've stayed together, and they've been trying to win more championships. They fell short this time. And if it's not going to be the same team this next year, just from the respect perspective, thank you, San Antonio, for what you've done for basketball, and you've been doing it for a long time. But we have to say goodbye according to, ladies and gentlemen, the old marker right here. See it? And of course, you see my list that I've had. I've kept it for the last week or two. So San Antonio gets the Ghostbuster sign. And by the way, we will be enhancing the size of these logos. I know they're itty-bitty, and I apologize. It's one of those underestimations that I had. So there you see it right there. That thing will probably fall pretty soon. All right. Golden State, Memphis, game number 1 was Sunday as we wrap up our show. And to give you a quick review, if you didn't get to watch the game, Golden State started off very well early. At one point, had a 16-point lead, despite the fact that MVP of the league, that's right, he was named MVP today, Steph Curry, did not have a three-pointer, at least not until the midway part of the second quarter. Thing that Golden State has to watch out for, I know they won big this afternoon, is the fact, or yesterday, is the fact that they got into some foul trouble. Okay, Draymond Green got into foul trouble, and Bogut, their center, got into big-time foul trouble early. That meant Reece Spates had to come in. That's when Memphis started to cut the lead in the second quarter. It got down to 6 points at one juncture. That's when Stephen Curry took advantage of some screens, got open, and hit a couple of three-pointers on back-to-back trips. I think that got Golden State rejuvenated. They led at 9 by the break, and then second half got the lead to as high as 20. Here's the thing. The post players did not lose this game for Memphis. I mean, Gasol had 21, Randolph had 20. They played fine. The backcourt, you could tell they missed Mike Conley big time. And if we don't see him back, they don't have a chance of even winning one game. I'm not talking about getting back in the series. They don't even have a chance of putting one of these into the series column, okay? It's going to be a goose egg. Their backcourt right now can't do it. Courtney Lee, didn't do much in the game. He had 9 points, but he wasn't the worst player. Calathes was, and in his defense, Calathes is a third-string guard. He's not used to playing. But here's the facts here, okay? He didn't score a point in the game, and he had 3 turnovers. It would have been better off starting Udro. Udro, by the way, only played 2 fewer minutes than Calathes did. Calathes had 18, had 20 minutes, and Udro had 18. Backcourt play, as far as the scoring, well, it wasn't there for Memphis. They didn't have it. And you might be able to score in the low 90s or mid 90s against a lot of teams and win. Against Memphis, for Memphis against Golden State, that'll get you blown out. They only had 86, and the game was decided early in the second half, losing by 15. We're going to keep up with the status, by the way, of Mike Conley. Of course, who had that horrific facial injury late in the series against Portland just a week ago, and they've got to get him back some way, somehow. If they don't, then now Coach Yeager is going to have to make a big decision on changing things up as far as that backcourt, because they can't keep going the way they are right now. Can the Memphis Grizzlies? Okay, doesn't mean you have to score 110, but the bottom line is you got to get more point production from your guards. It can't just be all the front court. It can't be just a Gasol and Randolph show. Well, that will do it for this edition of Truth, Justice in the NBA. As we say goodbye to San Antonio, the 8th team to exit the playoffs. But again, if they do change the team up either a little bit or quite a bit, make it a wholesale change, it was one heck of a run they had. 5 titles in a span of, I believe, 16 seasons. Not too shabby at all. Not too shabby at all. Chicago, Cleveland, and the Clippers, Houston, quarterfinal games. If you look at the whole perspective of the NBA, we're down to the final 8. The other 2 games will be on Tuesday with game number 2 of the series between Washington and Atlanta. Same will hold true for Memphis and for Golden State. Thanks, everybody. Truth, Justice in the NBA. We're out.